Georgia State Senator Steve Gooch joins us today. He's running for the office of Lieutenant Governor. Senator, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon. Great to be with you today.
We always try to highlight at Editorial Interchange a local business in our communities. We're big on local economies. Do you have a business in your area up in Lumpkin County that you'd like to highlight?
So you're going to get me in trouble now if you start wanting me to pick one out of all the many.
You can give a couple, whatever you need to
All
do.
right, so I'll tell you what, let's do an industry. We are
Sure.
proud in North Georgia of our vineyard industry, all the wineries up here. In fact, in my Senate district, which covers 7 counties, Dawson, Lumpkin, White, Union, Fannin, Gilmer, and Pickens, I believe there are 34 vineyards and wineries in those 7 counties. And living in Dahlonega and Lumpkin County, we're sort of in the center of that, ground zero of all those vineyards. And we have some really fantastic facilities. So I would encourage all your listeners to get in the car this week, or definitely before it gets really hot, come to North Georgia and visit some of them. You can take wine tours to various locations, spend the afternoon and the evening. You'll have a great time. We just ask that you don't drink and drive home. But we've got some great ones like Wolf Mountain, Frogtown Vineyard, Kenya, or Kaya rather. And of course, my last one is one of my favorite is Montaluce. They are all fabulous, great wines, good food, a lot of weddings on weekends. A lot of people we have thousands of guests that come up every week to our vineyards up here. So that would be something I would encourage your listeners to do. Take a weekend trip. You can come for the day or you can come and spend the night. Got a lot of great cabins and places to stay and overnight accommodations as well. We have state parks. All of our really nice state parks are in North Georgia. Waterfalls, hiking trails. Of course, the Appalachian Trail comes right across our hills right here above Dahlonega between here and Suches. So it's a great opportunity for families to get out of the house and come see the mountains and enjoy some fresh air.
Well, I'm a big fan of the North Georgia mountains and all the parks up there, so I can attest for everything you just said. You're
Yes,
right
sir.
on the money. Gorgeous place, God's country up in
Yes,
the
sir.
mountains of
Absolutely.
North Georgia.
Well, and
Hey,
Georgia's beautiful too. We've got a lot of beautiful things to visit in Georgia. We're blessed to have so much diversity in our state, from the sea down at Sea Island all the way to the mountains of Blue Ridge and up in Clayton and Northwest Georgia as well. So it's a wonderful state to live.
well, for people who don't know you, maybe they might know the name Steve Gooch, maybe they know you as a senator, but they don't really know anything about you personally. Give us some of your background and how you got into politics.
Sure. So I was born and raised here in North Georgia in Lumpkin County in Dahlonega, a small town up against the foothills of the mountains, Appalachian. I'm a sixth generation Lumpkin County boy. Grew up on a farm. Our farm was north of town, about 8 miles, just before you go over into Suches, which is where our family originally came from, over in the Union County side of Suches and Blairsville. We settled in Dahlonega early 1800s, and I grew up on a farm where we had poultry, swine, and cattle. I put myself through school. We have a college here in Dahlonega called the University of North Georgia. It's the second oldest college in the state, of course, UGA being the first. UNG here in Dahlonega is the second oldest. It was originally the Agricultural College of Georgia. So this part of the country was really uh, heavily developed with ag and some farms, but not a lot of industry. And so growing up here, I got involved in the local chamber of commerce. I was appointed to the local board of directors of the chamber. I joined the Rotary Club when I was 21. And I got involved with the Lumpkin leadership class at the age of 21 as well. So I started to learn what some of the needs were in my community. There weren't a lot of job opportunities here. So either you tried to get a job at a local factory. We had a couple factories at the time. One was about to shut down. The Mohawk industry was about to close because people started going to a different type of floor system instead of carpets. And so we were losing our manufacturing jobs. We mostly had farm jobs. And then, of course, the government. You had the school system here, the local schools, the college, and we have Camp Frank D. Merrill, which is a division of Fort Benning. It's the U.S. Army Ranger Camp, and it's just a few miles up the road in the National Forest north of Dahlonega. So we're blessed to have the military presence here in our community as well. But that was pretty much it. Most people had to travel either to Gainesville or down toward Atlanta to go to work. In fact, several people in the community drove all the way to General Motors at night at the Doraville plant down on the 285 area where the assembly is today. And so there weren't many opportunities. And so I wanted to get involved and help my community. So I ran for the office of Soule County Commissioner. A lot of your listeners today probably don't know what a Soule Commissioner form of government is, but most counties in Georgia and around the country have a board of commissioners that make all the decisions at the local level. And most counties either have 3, 5, or some other odd number. Some have as many as 11 commissioners, but typically there's 5 commissioners and a county manager. Well, Lumpkin County only had 1 commissioner. And so I ran for the office of Soule Commissioner. I ran against a Democrat, and I ran as a Republican. So I was elected. I beat the Democrat. I was the first Republican ever elected in Lumpkin County's history, which I thought was a pretty big deal. But even bigger deal, the fact that I was 32 years of age. I was pretty young for a Soule Commissioner form of government. A lot of people thought I was a little bit too young to be taking on a 65, 70-year-old incumbent Democrat. But I felt like the time was good because of some of the things that needed to be done and be addressed in our community that just was being ignored. And so I ran and I got elected. So I served as Soule County Commissioner for 1 term, and then I put it on the ballot. I made a campaign promise, and that's something I always tell elected officials: be careful what you guarantee somebody you're going to do or promise you're going to do, because they're going to hold your feet to the fire. So I promised in my campaign I would let the citizens vote to go from a Soule Commissioner form of government to a board of commissioners. We put it on the ballot and it won. So we transitioned after my first term to a board of commissioners, and I ran for chairman, which is a part-time job, but it also allowed us to hire a professional county manager. So we did that. I was the commission chairman for 4 years and decided after 8 years of being in a local office that I had done a lot of good things here locally, and so I decided to move on. I was appointed by Sonny Perdue to be on the technical college system board, and that's a board of basically people managing the technical schools around our state. There's 14 board members, 1 for each congressional district. I was on that board for a little over a year or so, and I got an opportunity to get put on the DOT board, which is the Department of Transportation State Board, and they oversee all the roads and bridges in the state, plus the aviation division of all the airports. And so I served on that board for almost 2 years. And then I was elected to the state Senate. When Nathan Deal when he became governor, I became the senator from the 51st district. So that was 16 years ago. So I've been in the Senate for that many years. I served as the transportation chairman. I served 8 years as the majority whip. And then for the last 3 years, I served as the majority leader, which is the highest ranking Republican spot in the Republican caucus. And my job as a majority leader was to help build consensus with our caucus, build the priorities for that year for the Senate, working with the Lieutenant Governor's office, working with the governor, and of course the House of Representatives and the leadership over in the House. We work to get conservative bills passed like we've done. The last 4 years have been a significant improvement over the past years that I've been in the Senate. In the past 4 years, we've cut taxes 4 years in a row. We're working on eliminating the income tax. The income tax in Georgia had never been lowered. From the time it was created in the 1920s until now, it had always been at 6%. Now we've lowered it 4 consecutive years. We've gone from 6% down to 4.99%. My goal as Lieutenant Governor is to eliminate the income tax. Can you do that overnight? No, it's going to take some time. My goal in my first year as a Lieutenant Governor will be to lower the income tax to 2.5%. And I think we can get there within 2 to 3 years if we'll do some things to discipline ourselves and get away from some of the corporate giveaways that we've seen over the years. Even this year, we passed a lot of tax credits for corporations. But quite frankly, some of the tax credits are needed in order to incentivize and induce some of those corporations to come here to bring jobs. And that's one of the things I want to do is help bring jobs to rural Georgia. We still have areas in rural Georgia, especially in South Georgia, that have really low employment numbers. A lot of people down there are having to drive 1 or 2 hours to get a job and to work every day to feed their families. We need to be bringing some of these economic development opportunities to those rural areas of the state. And that's one of the things that I really will work hard on and focus on. Also protecting our farm areas and our agricultural industry in Georgia. It's the number one industry here in our state, and I will do everything I can to protect that, because I grew up on a farm and I know how hard it is to make a living and what an issue it is when you have too many government regulations and the burden that those government regulations are put on farmers. And so I got involved in politics just really to help my communities, help small counties like the one I live in, but all other parts of rural Georgia as well. And there's been issues that we've fought and battled on. And be honest with you, I worry about the far left. I've seen the Democrats in this country move farther and farther to the left. We don't have the Democrat Party anymore that we had when Sam Nunn and Zell Miller were in office 30 years ago. Those guys are gone. And the new Democrats, the younger Democrats, are much more progressive, much more liberal. And the woke left is trying to destroy capitalism in this country. And they want to move us to a socialist form of government. And I will not stand for it as lieutenant governor. I will stand up to the left, and I will make sure we protect our freedoms and we protect our conservative values.
I like the fact that you've got that local government experience too, because so many people, I think, take for granted when they look at the state constitutional races and think, oh, you've got to think big, you got to think statewide, which is important, obviously.
Sure.
But you also have to maintain that local quality of life in those communities. And like you said, if you don't have jobs in those communities, in those rural communities, they'll fade away. So I appreciate your stance on trying to bring more employment opportunities and maintain that quality of life in those rural areas.
Sure. One of the things that I've worked hard on the last 6 years is to bring uh, internet service to the rural areas. 7 years ago, you could go anywhere in Georgia outside of a major city, and people would complain. Their first complaint was, we can't get internet service to our homes and our businesses. And if you don't have internet today, you can't operate a small company. And so I've worked alongside the Speaker of the House and the leadership in the House. We passed significant legislation to allow broadband deployment out into the rural areas through the use of the EMCs. And the EMCs is your electric membership co-ops who provide power to about 2/3 of the state. There's over 6 million people today that get their power from an EMC. And broadband was a real challenge in these rural areas. And so we were able to pass a law that would allow the EMCs to get into the broadband business. And you might think that's a simple task, but it wasn't, because all the local providers that had the internet service, they didn't want the competition. They wanted to continue to be the dominant monopoly in those areas. And so the big corporate guys from Wall Street didn't want the guys from Main Street to be able to get in the broadband business. And so we finally got the bill passed. Now today, out of the 41 EMC co-ops out there in the country, in the state of Georgia, we now have 26 EMCs that have deployed broadband. We've got a lot of federal monies in from Washington, D.C. over the last 5 years as well. We've deployed over $1 billion worth of funds through grants to these small local communities. And now people have fiber optic connectivity to the home and to their business. It's been great for telehealth industries as well. You have hospitals that need to be able to transmit files from their local small rural hospitals up to the big hospitals like a trauma center in Atlanta. And they weren't able to do that before. So they would have to literally load the patient in a transport vehicle or an ambulance and drive them 3 or 4 hours to a big city hospital just to get medical attention. Now they can do that from their small community hospitals through the internet access. And so we consider that a huge victory and a big step forward for rural development.
That's fabulous. Hey, this General Assembly 2026 session just closed recently. What's your impression of how the this year's General Assembly went?
Oh man, some people call it a three-ring circus. I think a lot of posturing went on. You had a lot of people running for different offices, and I'm not going to start calling names, but you had just about every office on the ballot up for grabs this year, with the exception of um, Tyler Harper, who's running for reelection as ag commissioner, and then Barbara Holmes, who's running for reelection to the commissioner of labor's position. Other than those two slots, I believe every one of these other statewide constitutional offices are wide open. So you have people running for governor, that's in the General Assembly. You have a lot of senators running in a House rep running for lieutenant governor. You have several running for Secretary of State, all the way down the ballot. Attorney General, we have 2 senators. So we saw some real political maneuvering going on in the House and the Senate this year. People trying to get attention, trying to get free press, make a few sound bites, throw some stuff up on the wall to see what stuck. But I try to continue to maintain a level head and a serious composure about let's get to work for the 11 million Georgians and be serious about our jobs and not play games and not play petty politics. But at the end of the day, we were able to pass some significant legislation. We got the budget passed, of course. That's the only thing we're required by Constitution to do is to pass a balanced budget. Thank goodness Georgia has a constitutional amendment to allow or to require a balanced budget. Otherwise, you'd be like Washington, D.C. You would continue to borrow money and make bigger government. So I wish the federal government had a balanced budget requirement as well. But we had some significant wins this year, no doubt.
Um, Highlights of your Senate career. What would you consider some of the highlights of your work in the Senate?
Well, there's been several. I wish I had a list in front of me, but I would say there's been 20 or 30 that I could really dig into, and we'd be here all afternoon. But you have some of the things that are more on the fiscal side with monetary. We pass zero-based budgeting, which requires that state agencies go every year and justify why they need the monies that they need. Our state budget has grown significantly in the last 5 to 7 years. We're growing our state at a pretty rapid pace right now with population growth. In fact, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce estimates in the next 20 years we will grow another 2 million citizens. Our budget continues to grow. Inflation has been a major factor in that, of course, in the last 4 or 5 years with the Joe Biden administration spending trillions of dollars they didn't have. It was like money was falling out of the sky for 2 years up there. But that drove the cost of living through the roof. And it cost for the cost of government went up as well. So we've seen a tremendous increase in spending, but we've lowered the taxes in the meantime. We didn't just spend money we didn't have. We gave money back. So some of the things that I'm most proud of is cutting the income tax 4 consecutive years while I've been the majority leader, also sending back billions of dollars of that surplus to the taxpayers. Those are the hardworking Georgians who have paid in every year in their government state income tax. And so we gave part of that money back. But at the same time, we gave money back. We also invested a lot in infrastructure. We've spent billions of dollars extra in the transportation world because we need to continue to upgrade our roads and bridges. We need to increase capacity, but we also have to address the huge demand of truck traffic that's coming in and out of Atlanta because of the Port of Savannah and the Port of Brunswick, which are two of the fastest growing ports on the eastern seaboard. It's very important to our economic growth and prosperity that we continue to invest in that infrastructure. We also have the largest and the busiest airport in the world right here in downtown Atlanta. That's significant. A lot of people underestimate what the impact of that has been to our economy, but I can tell you it's huge. Delta Airlines is the state's largest employer. They hire over 34,000 employees a year that work here in Georgia. And so we're proud to have them here with our big airport in Atlanta. And so we just have to continue to work on investment in infrastructure to make sure our water, sewer, gas is available for the economic development opportunities that continue to come to Georgia. We have a really good tax policy and good tax climate here in our state. We have good weather for the most part. We have some bad winter days, but not many. You may get 2 or 3 snows a year. So people can predict our weather pretty good here in Georgia. There's not bad winters, and it's not extremely hot in the summer. You'll hit 100 degrees maybe 3 or 4 days in the summer in the month of August. But primarily, we have beautiful weather in Georgia. So that's some of the things that people want to come here for: the quality of life, our education, and of course, the beauty and the diversity that I mentioned earlier, from the mountains to the sea. And so those are some of the things that I think bring people to Georgia. Cutting the income tax is an important part of that, so we can continue to be competitive, so we can bring those good jobs here to our state. I've worked hard in the transportation industry as well. Some of the things I've been proud of is to be able to help to invest more money in transportation over the years. Since about 2015, we've actually doubled the amount of money that we're spending on roads and bridges in our state. That also helps our cities and counties at the local level to help maintain their bridges and roads as well. The typical paved road in Georgia has to be resurfaced every 10 or 12 years. At the rate we were paving those roads 15 years ago, or actually 10 years ago, it would have been more like 22 to 25 years before those roads were resurfaced. And so that was something I worked hard on as a transportation chairman to make sure we address the needs of our infrastructure, and we continue to work on that. Other things that we've worked on this past year and 2 years ago are more social issues, like some common sense things like religious freedom, protecting people's right to worship the religion of their choice. And you might think that's a given, but it's not, because you have the left trying every way they can to prevent people from worshiping their God. Another issue that is a common sense issue is keeping boys out of the girls' locker room, keeping boys out of girls' sports. That's another common sense thing. Growing up, we never would have thought or imagined you would have to pass a state law to protect girls from boys in their locker room. We would have gotten our butts whipped had we got caught doing something like that. So now we've had to pass a law to protect that. So those are some of the things that I've been proud of recently. We continue to work on education. We have a real issue right now with literacy. If you're not able to read by the third grade on a third grade level, there's a good chance that you may not make it out of high school, and there's a high chance that you may end up in prison as well. And so this year we put $100 million into the state's budget to help the local governments hire literacy coaches. So now every school, K through third grade, is going to have a literacy coach that would be assigned to make sure that our kids are up to a third grade level of reading before they get out of the third grade. And there's a big percentage of kids right now that are getting into high school that can't even read on a third grade level. And that's unacceptable. When we're falling behind states like Mississippi and Alabama, then we know we have a challenge on our hands. And so those are some things that we're going to have to continue to work on. They don't get corrected overnight, but that's one issue that we take on in the Senate as a key priority, and the House has adopted that as well. In fact, I believe the governor may have signed that bill this morning at the state capitol. I could not make it down to witness that, but we're proud of Governor Kemp for helping us to pass that bill this year. Another bill we worked on for 2 or 3 years is school choice. A lot of people are worried about, how does that impact your local schools? We don't believe it's going to have a negative impact at all. We believe that the parents should make the final decision on what's the best educational opportunity for their child. One size fits all does not work in Georgia, especially with the diversity that we have between rural areas, urban areas, and suburban areas. We believe that a parent should decide if their child needs to go to a different school for a better education. So we passed a bill that allows for some limited voucher opportunities. It will go to the kids that are attending a low performing school, which is the lowest 25 percentile on the scales. And so that bill passed. It took 2 years to get it out of the House, but we got it done. The governor signed it. I think in the next year to 2 years, you'll see an expansion of that attempt in the House and the Senate, where will be a full-blown universal voucher type program. And that'll allow any kid in any school the opportunity to go to the school of their choice. And so those are some of the wins that I think we've had in the last 2 to 3 years. And there's plenty of others, but those are just some of the highlights that I'm proud of.
Those are big ones. Those are laudable. And thanks for your work on all of those.
Sure.
Hey,
Absolutely.
for voters who may know that there is a position of lieutenant governor, but don't really understand what the lieutenant governor does, give us a job description on lieutenant governor.
That's a great question. In fact, I would venture to bet that 7 out of 10 people you talk to couldn't tell you what the job duties of a lieutenant governor are. A lot of people compare them to being the vice president to the president. So with J.D. Vance right now, he's the vice president of the United States. He actually has a ability to vote in the U.S. Senate. If there's a tie, the vice president would go in and cast a vote to break the tie. In the Georgia Senate, the lieutenant governor does not have any voting privileges at all. He or she derives their power from the rules that are adopted by the full Senate on the first day of session every 2 years. And so this November, after the general election is concurred, you know who your next senators are going to be. They'll be sworn in on the second Monday of January. That same day that the Senate is sworn into office for 2 years, they will adopt the rules for how the Senate will basically govern itself for the next 2 years. And it requires a 50% margin of votes to pass the rules on the first day. If you try to change the rules after the first day, it requires 2/3 of the chamber to do so. So the powers of the lieutenant governor are baked into the rules of the Senate. And so right now, the lieutenant governor has quite a bit of authority. He or she can appoint members to the committee alongside of 4 other senators. There's what's called the Committee on Assignments. So it consists of the majority leader and the pro tem, who are picked by the Senate Republicans or whoever the majority caucus is. And then the other 2 members of the Committee on Assignments are selected by the lieutenant governor. So the lieutenant governor has 2 picks, with himself being the third one. So he or she has pretty much majority control of the Committee on Assignments right now. They pick who the chair people are of all the committees. They decide which committees each senator will get to sit on throughout the 2 years, and then they control the basically the flow of the business of the Senate. The lieutenant governor presides over the proceedings of all the meetings and all the sessions, but he decides with the Committee on Assignments how many bills are coming to the floor the next day, and a lot of times he decides which of those bills actually make it to the floor and which bills don't. And so he has a lot of discretion, has a lot of flexibility and authority, and it seems to work. Now, I've seen days years ago where the powers of the lieutenant governor were stripped by the caucus, and things didn't work so well. It was a 3-ring circus back then, and so that didn't work for about a year, and those powers were restored back to the lieutenant governor. And so primarily the lieutenant governor presides over the Senate chamber. His powers are pretty much limited to the chamber itself. Outside of that, he is the number 2 man to the governor. And I say man just because currently it's Burt Jones. So if the governor were to be incapacitated for whatever reason and could no longer serve as governor, the lieutenant governor would be elevated to the status of governor just on a temporary basis until a special election is called and a new governor is elected. And then the lieutenant governor would go back to his chamber and continue in the role as lieutenant governor. And that's a quick summary of the duties of the lieutenant governor.
No, that's great. And I agree with you. The overall majority of people had no idea what the lieutenant governor does.
They really don't.
Well, this year we have a lot of open seats for the state constitutional offices. So the races are pretty crowded, full of candidates. Give us an idea of what sets you apart from your competitors.
Sure, that's a great question. There's a lot of good candidates running for all these races, from U.S. Senate, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, all the way down the ballot. And so I think a lot of that just boils down to, experience, my job experience in the Senate, also my private sector experience. I've been a private business owner now for about 15, 17 years, and I've run my own company. I sign the front of a paycheck instead of the back of a paycheck. So I feel like that gives me a unique experience as well. I know what government regulations can do to small businesses. I've seen the regulations put a damper on the ability of small government or small businesses to expand and create jobs, especially in rural areas. So I want to apply my common sense training, my private sector experience, and of course my public sector experience. I want to apply that to the job of lieutenant governor, to lead the Senate, to continue to make Georgia the number 1 state to do business, to continue to invest in infrastructure, to invest in, of course, education, but also to protect our citizens from criminal activity. We have 400,000 illegal immigrants coming into this state because of the failed policies of Joe Biden in his 4 years as president, when he released 20 million illegals across the border of Mexico into our country. That is unacceptable. We have to stop allowing illegals to come into our country. If you want to come to this country and be an American citizen, fine. We will welcome you with open arms. But you have to do it through the front door, not the back door. And you have to follow the rules of our nation. We are a nation of laws. We want you to come here, but follow the laws, pay your taxes, and be good American citizens. That's all we ask. People who come here illegally, they're driving up and down the roads in our vehicles. They don't have insurance. They're hurting people in car wrecks. They're committing other crimes. They're stealing from us. They're hurting our citizens. They're killing us. They're raping our daughters, and it's unacceptable. We cannot tolerate that. I want to help Donald Trump to bring the America First agenda to America, and especially here to Georgia. I want to continue to roll back the income tax to get it to zero. I can get the income tax down to 2.5%. in the Senate in my first term of office. I'm convinced of that. But I also want to work on another issue that's important to people. It may be more important to some people than the income tax issue, and that is property taxes. We have seen huge increases in property values over the last 5 years because of the assessed values continue to go up on people's homes. Unfortunately, some of our local governments have not rolled back the millage rates on those homes when those assessed values continue to increase 10 to 15, even 20% per year. We have to do something about the property tax system in our state. It is un American that we would throw people out of their homes, especially veterans and senior citizens who are on fixed incomes who can no longer afford to pay to stay in their homes. And if you don't pay your property taxes, the government will throw you out of your house and sell your home on the courthouse steps of the local uh, courthouse. And we're not going to be able to tolerate that anymore. We have to find a solution to that. I'm committed to doing that. We've made some progress on that the last 2 years in the House and the Senate, but we still have a ways to go on that as well. So those are some of the things I think that make me unique amongst my competitors. My local government experience as a chief executive officer running a county by myself, my private sector experience owning my own company, and then being in leadership in the Senate for so long. I've been the majority leader and the majority whip. My colleagues elected me to represent them. They trusted me, and I think I can continue to represent the Senate, working with the governor and working with the House of Representatives through the Speaker's office to continue to get things done to help the House succeed, and they will help us succeed, and then Georgia succeeds. And so those are some of the things that I believe that sets me apart from my competition. And so I'm offering myself to the citizens to be the lieutenant governor for the next 4 years. My website is goochforgeorgia.com. I would love to have your support. I would love to earn your vote. And if you want to give me a call, you can do so on my mobile phone. My number is 706 300 6568. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with your listeners today. I'd love to have your support. The election is May 19th. Early voting started last week, so you have until Friday the 15th to cast your ballot early. Otherwise, we encourage you to vote on Tuesday, May the 19th.
Well, early voting's already started, so get out there, ladies and gentlemen, and cast that vote. And how many times have you ever heard of someone running for a state constitutional officer that gave you their personal cell phone number? I have never seen that. And I've been in politics, watching politics for 20 years. So you've got somebody who's got the experience, he's got the wide breadth of experience, and the experience is very deep as well. Senator Gooch, we appreciate you coming on with us, and best of luck to you in this election.
Hey, thank you, sir. Good to see you.
All right.